industry, and we've been doing lots of work in the operational side of AI, and obviously lots of interesting questions to be answered from our point of view. And our customers have a lot of requests in terms of the quality of AI, the value, the responsibility, so on and so forth. It'll be good to get a perspective from the academia and also what they're doing, and I'll also give you our perspective on this panel. We're hoping that we get some interesting discussions going. So I'd like to invite the panelists, Professor Villemia, Professor Marco Aello, Professor Jose Manuel Alonso, and Professor Peter Fecke from various institutes. Please come on to the stage. And we can begin. I don't know if you want to just get the chairs, you're going to see some part of the screen while I don't want to flash these. Okay, just the screen. We were here last year talking about, LLMs, ChatGPT, the hype, the chaos, the complexity. Our office is in Palo Alto, right next to Stanford University. So we have non-stop, meetings, workshops, presentations. It's a complete craziness in that area of Silicon Valley. Sometimes you keep wondering what the heck are we doing there, because it's just the craziness that's happening in the world of trying to build brand new systems. There's hardware systems, software systems, there's the tools, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And there's a lot of hype, that. But it's given some foundation, interesting things about you can redesign systems, knowledge systems, and AI systems to solve some interesting problems, to improve productivity. As you know, Microsoft, Facebook, Google have all launched all kinds of open source tools, front-end tools for doing software development, services, systems, potentially, and we can discuss some of that. And of course, AI modeling for various industries. There's a lot of, sort of, as I said, it's really chaotic in some sense. We get bombarded non-stop. And I think at some point things will settle down. We know there's a lot of issues. We know that nothing is perfect here, but it'll be good to get your perspective on this topic. So the panel has, the format is 5 to 6 minutes for panelists. I'll also give myself to 5 to 6 minutes. Questions from me and questions from the audience. I think the broad areas that touch are, will future systems be designed using a lot of AI techniques? We already know that there's a lot of DevOps happening in software development. We're trying to use AI tools, LLM tools to be able to design software systems. Again, the question is it part of the process? How do you validate it? We also know there's lots of interesting questions on robotic systems. When I mean robotic automation versus robotic systems, to look at how do you collect data, how do you organize data, both multimodal data, speech, image, text, so on and so forth. And then the biggest question we're all facing is, are LLMs really just the initial foundation? Are they really facing a decline? Or are we going to reuse some of the knowledge and build better systems? At least in healthcare, we know that LLMs are not going to do their job, right? Because we have zero tolerance for negative answers or things like that. So we know that LLMs, we publish lots of interesting work, we've been to conferences to mention how, in the world of LLMs, I think we need to be careful about certain domains, but other domains will do well. We know how we look at it. So I put this up chart last year too, saying that there's a lot of articles. It's like non-stop. The senior most execs from every corporation is worried about, will they lose their staff? Will they lose their employee jobs? Will they actually be able to do better jobs and better ways of managing the systems? Is it going to change workplace? Is it going to change how you do things? The answer is yes and no. It's happening. It's happening over time. But I think there's going to be a lot more interesting changes happening in the next 5-10 years. I met with top CEO of our company. He said the next 10 years will be the most exciting years because of the fact that there's a lot of interesting, sort of rethinking happening in the world of AI. And there is still some issue here, right? Nobody really knows how these LLMs work, in terms of large scale. So if you ask Facebook, how does it work? Well, you feed it, you train it. If you ask OpenAI, they say, we want them to tell you how it works, because even they don't know how it works. But there's so many interesting factors playing a role in how we correlate information from text. If you look at image processing, it's a little bit different. And I think, there's going to be a lot of interesting questions asked about how do you model structured data, When I say structure, I mean, image data, speech data, sensor data, and so on and so forth, along with text data, and how do you actually find correlations. I don't think it's that easy, but that's going to be some of the discussion we have. I think the biggest trend we're noticing is that, really everyone knows this, the fact that the cloud computing enables some of this, plus because the GPUs have made it faster and better. And who knows, next few years there'll be another round of computing techniques coming out that will change the whole game in terms of how you reorganize systems. I think there's going to be a lot more emphasis in robotics. At the very end, I'm showing how a robot with a lot of speech, image, voice, and language models, obviously refined, able to actually handle patient care to a certain extent. You still need human to approve the final decisions, but robot can actually do a lot of interesting work, and that's already coming to a certain extent. Of course, the question is, do you trust it? Is it responsible? Is it ethical? There's a lot of interesting things to be resolved here. And so, going back to the word of how we noticed, having partnered with Stanford University and some of the things ourselves, we built our own custom LLMs, completely trained from proprietary data sets. We're able to see much higher performance. But now these LLMs are going through a lot of classification. You have to fine-tune them, you have to do a lot of large context, short context, you have to do RAGs, which is basically giving you a certain context. And is LLM just another search engine with some contextual search? And you're giving you, trying to get the best precision, best recall, and best accuracy. I'm noticing that the answer is yes. You build all your vector databases, you get your document search done, you vectorize it, and then feed it into LLM, you get the good results. So really speaking, these LLMs are really useless unless you build context. And we're noticing that quite a bit. I think as we go along and we build new systems, we'll discover that the knowledge model is the key. The knowledge model of a certain domain is going to play a very important role in how you design systems, how you build systems, how you make things exciting, and at the same time, accurate. And we're going to publish our work in this at different conferences. Typically, we publish them in operational research, supply chain conferences, medical conferences, to show that these technologies are great, but in reality, the domain is coming. So we think LLMs are going to go sort of downhill because of just the performance, but there's going to be a new generation of tools coming out based on similar architectures that gives you much better performance, and that'll be more in the broader generative AI. It's already happening to a certain extent. And so we wrote an article saying that there's a lot of panic, and we think we shouldn't be panicking, because a lot of the core domain knowledge is sitting in enterprises, corporations, public sector. You could use that in a smart way to process your documents, process your supply chains, process your value chains, look at how to leverage it. And we're only noticing that in healthcare. In healthcare, we actually use proprietary data, and we're going to get really good results. And not have to depend on public domain LLMs. We think the private domain will actually be the most important thing going forward. And the question is, how fast can you build it? How fast can you compete with OpenAI and Facebook and others? We talk to Facebook all the time. We're testing their products. We're also partners with NVIDIA. We're testing their products and kind of use some of their stuff as well. We're partners with Google, same thing. A lot of interesting questions even they're asking. But we know in the world of healthcare, pharmaceutical industry, we have to be very careful in how we actually apply these things. Of course, in the area of more of document management, human resources, maybe it's going to be a little bit different in how you use systems. And so there's a lot of interest now in looking at how do you design software systems, how do you build better code, how do you test code, is it faster, better, quicker? And I think there's going to be changes, and I know a lot of you are involved in software engineering, software development, systems engineering, system development. There's going to be a lot of new processes, new DevOps, where generative AI LLMs will come at different points to help you assist in certain things and to be able to improve your speed. And you still have to approve it. You still have to ensure that it's clear. I'm sure there'll be future automated systems coming. So I think I'll stop here and let the panelists go one by one and talk about their positions, their perspectives. If you want to use your laptop, you're welcome to come and use laptop. 5 to 6 minutes. I think we have got 1 hour and more total, right? So we'll use some time for questions for me and questions. Yeah, perfect. So 5 minutes each will give us plenty of time for questions afterwards. So let me stop here and
Yeah, so my few cents on the topic, although I'm not an AI expert, I'm just this software data engineer. So I need to be very humble in the statements which are put forward. And I prepared the slides in light of that. So my question was, is it really true that LLMs and AI will cause a disruptive transformation? And I was thinking about it a little bit yesterday while I was sailing, and I came to this definition of disruption. I'm not sure if it's true because I'm not a management or business guy per se either, but my definition would be disruption occurs when the technology understands the business earlier than business understands the technology. And this in fact might be the case right now. That's the main question which I wanted to put forward, or bold statement which I wanted to give. I have a couple of others. So one of the issues is that AI, you could claim, will not be able to effectively replace the complete software lifecycle. Yes, code can be generated much more easily, and productivity of code development goes up, but this causes, in fact, problems further on in the chain, in the software lifecycle, right? So you might speed up one part of the software lifecycle, but software and software service development is much more than code development per se. So also, if you look at the quality of the code, it goes downhill with just blindly copying code and reusing it from LLMs, for example. And one of the statistics which I found in, while quickly Googling, is, and I checked the source by the way, is that LLMs only imply in 35% of the cases good refactorings. So this is also an area of concern, and another area of concern lies in the privacy and the IP. Because LLMs, they take and consume everything which they can get without taking into account too much of the copyrights of these codes. Security is another aspect. Security engineering is something which is very a specialist activity which needs to be done with very much care. And while we know these LLMs are hallucinating all of the time, they also hallucinate, they give you the impression your code is secure whilst it's not. So that's another provocative. I try to be provocative. You guys know I'm not provocative, so I try to be in this case. So also, this was rightfully, I guess, put forward by Ramesh, is AI methodologies, they were built, they were designed now already, I think, more or less 20 years ago, but with people in mind. People were centric, right? So we were thinking about making these teams more multidisciplinary, also coming up with automated tools, but with people in the center core. What now if we would replace these people with, I guess, bots? So, and while, for example, while we can use these days LLMs to very quickly define and generate user requirements, it makes the current agile methodologies maybe even look a little bit silly. So we need to rethink these approaches. And now, we cannot blindly, this is one of my main things, reuse the code. And it's poor quality, it's deceptive in the sense that you think you are generating code more quickly, but you hit a lot of problems with the quality, with the security, with the privacy, with the copyrights, and you name it. So you cannot blindly do it. So I call out for much more and deeper, I guess, education in the field of AI for virtually all students, because all students from all domains cross Discord will start using it. And my claim would be, don't use it unless you understand it, you know what you're doing. And one of my favorite authors in the field, who has nothing to do, in fact, with service science, is Carl Sagan. And he already called it out over 20 years ago, so that you should be very careful with using something blindly. So first, I call out for this understanding and increase for understanding. These were my points.
Yes, hello everybody. I didn't prepare a presentation, but I have some notes. So I do not have a microphone, but I still stand here. Yeah, I like to structure my short presentation in 3 parts. First, I like to give you some personal impressions from the field. Then in the second a short statement. I'd like to give you an overview on the field of AI and the application area of service systems, and then I'd like to give you an outlook. From my personal perspective, I'm now working at DFKI, the German Research Institute, for almost 20 years. As you might know, the German Research Institute for Artificial Intelligence was founded for 35 years ago, so now I remember. Thanks. I'm standing here. Do not sit down anymore. So DFKI is rather old, and during the lifetime of more than 35 years, the scenery of AI really changed a lot from my understanding. DFKI was rather small four decades ago. At the moment we have more than 1,000 employees at DFKI. We are a non-university research institute. We are doing research in a public-private partnership setting. We have foundations, we have some financial possibilities to doing research in every area of AI, and it's really exciting to see how the AI scenery changed the last 35 years. If I'm looking at the field, I think 50 years ago, artificial intelligence was more or less a niche field. Some even say it was a field in informatics, which is a dirty corner of informatics, where some splenary colleagues doing research, and I think the situation totally changed. AI research is now really mainstream research. But as you might remember, if you look back at the result of the research, I think we are currently in a hype of using AI research, but there are already so many research results which are in use in different service systems already. There's a famous quote from one of the founding fathers of John McCarthy, and he said 20 years or 30 years ago, as soon as it works, no one calls it AI anymore. And there are really some great examples. Think about a chess computer, or some kind of navigation system, or just the so-called research area of optical character recognition. These are all important results from AI research. They are great services, but nobody would nowadays say, oh, a chess computer is really a result of AI research, it's really intelligent. We are thinking about new problems which are still not solved, and this is AI, but everything what is really solved is not AI anymore, although it's the result of AI. So, from my understanding, it's really important to understand what is AI, and from my perspective, this is always a good idea to differentiate three different aspects. What is really the problem you try to solve? What is the solution you use to solve the problem? And what is the field who addresses this problem and the solution? And for example, if you think about machine translation, there are colleagues already working for 50 years or more to do this work, to teach a machine to translate some text. Nowadays we have a service, and it's really good, if you like, to get an average translation. The techniques for doing machine translation totally changed. 50 years ago, there was a good old-fashioned AI. Today we have the fancy large language models. It's a totally different technique, but the problem is still the same. And nowadays, because the systems are really good, we have a service. There's a German company, DeepL, who provides one of the best translation services, and they are really using deep learning techniques, but also good old-fashioned AI, some hybrid approaches for realizing it. So what might be the future? As I already said, there's good old-fashioned AI, but also I think nowadays we have the large language models, and in the future I think these both approaches might be converged together. You have some hybrid AI systems, and such hybrid AI systems are also necessary for developing service systems, because services, if you have a service catalog, for example, or you have a service specification, it is really necessary that this is really precisely described. So, from my understanding, it is always a good idea to really understand the world, to really understand the service systems. Service systems are complex, so you have the need for understanding the different components of the service systems. services might be aggregated. We have something like a service architecture. What is also necessary that you really understand your service processes. You have to do some service management in your service system. And of course, if you are talking about digital services, you have some kind of data for providing the services. If you think about machine translation, if you think about some digital services in the area of video streaming, object detection, they also have some data. And these three things have to be integrated, and then you have the integrated features of really effective service systems in the future. Thank you very much.
So I think we're all agreeing that something is changing, right? So something is important. The last 2 years, we've come and get different talks. So I would like to put this a little into perspective. I think it's true for services, for computer science, AI in general. And if you think of the paradigm, I think of Kuhn, right? This is actually the most sold book in science ever, sold more than 1 million copies. And he talks about paradigm shifts. What he says is like science does not progress in small increments, but at some point there's a disruptive event. Right? And what is a paradigm, according to him, what it says is the collection of beliefs, the techniques and values that a community is sharing. Right? And you have a shared research program. And the impression that I have is that this is actually happening right now. So if you look at what we were doing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, what we're doing now, the research agenda completely changed. It's completely different problems. Science all about hallucinations, reliability, trustworthiness, explainability. And we didn't talk about this at least as much 10 years ago. Right? And if you think of Kuhn, what he used to say about science, he said, well, there's a cycle in science. There's a normal science, that's when things are happening as usual, that's when you have the small increments part. This is very typical, and it goes on science for a very long time. Then there's some drift, something is happening, until you bring that field to a crisis. In the moment of crisis, science don't agree. Because people are claiming there's something new happening, people say, no, it's before, this doesn't work, and so on. Till you get the actual revolution, then you have the shift. Things are different. After the shift, there's a new way of doing science. There's a new way of doing things in that field. And he says that those moments are moments in which there's extraordinary research, which is typically exploratory in nature. They're curiosity driven. We're trying to find out something new, we're going for new solutions. And this can be handled through recursive philosophy, and there's debate over fundamentals. People start discussing, what are we doing? How did we do things before? Is this right? There's new ways of doing things. Right? And this brings the community to a crisis. So perhaps the question is, are we in a crisis right now? Right? So I just want to give you some examples of things that we've seen in the recent years, or actually recent months. And they say, okay, we have general artificial intelligence. We have Spark. We see that these things do things we didn't see before. And so that's a very optimistic view that came after ChatGPT 3 was released. And then you have other people say, no, ChatGPT is not at all AI. So Chomsky, if you read the paper, says, well, a child learns in a very different way than this thing and behaves in a different way. ChatGPT has no understanding of grammar. Of course, Chomsky is crazy about grammar, right? But anyway, say this is not it. This is not what we were waiting for. It's just at most a tool. And then other people say, well, there is a theory of mind emerging from these elements. Right? So in this case, this author, what he does is takes cognitive science tasks that are used in cognitive science, gives them to ChatGPT, and sees how successful ChatGPT is, and it is quite successful. So this is why it comes to the conclusion, it says, well, there is intelligence emerging. Right? Maybe it doesn't explain itself well, but it is there. And then you have, again, the other extreme. ChatGPT is bullshit. Right? This is a real paper, and it actually argues it. It comes to a generated by ChatGPT. I tried to check actually if the article was, and it wasn't. basically says bullshit as a definition in philosophy, or philosophy and science, is when you make mistakes without seeking a notion of truth or falsehood. So if you're trying to lie and you know you're lying, that's one thing. If you lie or say something wrong without even knowing that it's wrong, it's not true, then it's bullshit. I have a lot of counter arguments about papers, so if you want, we can discuss it. I won't do it now. But this is to show you, yes, we are in a moment of crisis, at least according to me, because you see that there's two completely different views. Some that say, yeah, it's just statistics that does something. Other people, there's intelligence emerging from these things and you cannot deny it. And then this is how actually we're doing with respect to publishing. So this is archive papers in the last 30 years. And what you can see here aggregated on the right, how much papers are about AI. Right? So it just increased incredibly in the last years. That one over there is by field. Computer science had a decent increase of 700%. Agriculture apparently not much. The animals, farm animals don't need that. Engineering is the one that has the most. Anyway, they all have more or less the same trend. They're doing research as normal. AI comes, it's all about AI. Right? AI intended as these new techniques in AI. AI exists for a long time, and the whole fashion AI has been having its winters and other things over time, but it's still there. Now, some disclaimers. Usually these analyses are performed after the fact, not during the fact. So being involved in the moment of transition means we're not completely objective to it. Second thing, the study of Kuhn was mostly done on natural phenomena and sciences. It was mostly astronomy and physics, right? So we are translating it to something which is more design engineeristic. But this has been done many times. It's also applied to social sciences, it's been applied to many other fields as a part of it. So I think we start to do that. And of course, we can ask him who is dead, and I'm also not feeling too well, especially mentally. So if we ask these LLMs themselves, what do you think? Are we in a paradigm shift? And this is what I did here with ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity. They say, okay, what do you think about yourself? And they come with a lot of argumentations about it, and it makes sense if you read them. So I think the argumentation holds. And if I have to summarize this, ChatGPT says mostly yes. Gemini says explicitly the jury's out, so I don't think you can call it now. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And Perplexity is a definite yes. Yeah, we are in a paradigm shift. This is similar to the one before. I looked at papers explicitly talking about LLM and GPT, and you can see that in 2018-19 there were 5-6 papers about it, almost nothing. The last 12 months, 9,227 papers were found on those LLMs in the type. Large language model, GPT, and LLMs. And if I restrict to computer science and archive, I get basically 1% less, so it's mostly computer science classified papers. And if I add terms like services, I get basically no results. So if I try to see specifically for the services. So this is another comment that I had. Scientists should use AI as a tool, not as an oracle, especially for other disciplines. Now we're seeing that happening. ChatGPT, throw something in, see what's coming out, sort out results. That's not really a good way of using it. And finally, one last comment is this one. In case you don't agree with the fact that this is a shift or that there's new techniques, so who else has an answer about that? And his answer is, I will not try to convince you, I'll just wait. So if you don't agree, most likely that part of the community will eventually die and the new community can actually. It's just a matter of time. And my final comment was about jobs. Ramesh, you mentioned jobs. I actually wrote a paper about that in which I have a little bit more less optimistic view, in which I think, well, I think there are some real threats to the job market. Maybe not in the next 5 years, but over a longer period of time, I think that is actually some concerns here. And with this, I'll stop and do it to Michael.
Okay, good morning everyone, and thank you my colleagues for the very interesting points. By being the last, I don't have a lot of new things to bring to the table, but I just wanted to discuss at least a couple of points, maybe from a more pragmatic point of view. And I'm very thankful, Marco, for the slide you shared with us, specifically regarding the number of papers, because it's something that I would like to discuss. And we have some young people in the audience, and I wonder what should we tell to them? Should they go with the flow and jump in the AI wagon, or should we still address other topics and other problems that should be solved? Because not all the problems of computer science are AI, or not everything can be solved by AI. And it's also related to something you bring up yesterday during the toast for Frank. Some conferences are having problems gathering papers and contribution and submission, but not on AI, because all the conferences I go, there is an AI keynote, there is at least a session in the best case scenario, and I'm not specifically an AI researcher, but AI is fluid in all our conference, all our spaces. So I would very much like to hear what do you think, what do you all think about this, and how young people should deal with this. And another point I would like to discuss is the use of AI as a tool, and not as an oracle, no? As you mentioned in another one of the slides. And for me personally, this is the approach I am personally using, and I feel more comfortable in, because I see AI just as another step in raising the abstraction level. This LLMs, we're programming in very low level programming language, then we have got high abstraction level language, and now we got LLM that allow us to create software from a natural language programming language, which will allow us, give us power to increase our productivity, as another of the colleagues mentioned, but use as a tool, not by themselves. And I would like to ask also the audience if they can share if they are using this tool in their daily lives, how are they dealing with them, what kind of usage are they made, because I have not made a formal study, but I've been gathering information from my colleagues that are using LLMs and ChatGPTs, and I don't see any, so far, any real significant killer application of ChatGPT that cannot be done. Okay, it may have some increment in productivity, so I can answer 100 emails a day instead of answering 50. But other than that, are we doing something new? Because it's something that was in the topics for today's panel about the creativity. Are we losing creativity by using this kind of tool? How are we going to move forward in that regard? So I would like to hear your opinion, but also the opinion of the people in the audience about some of these topics. Thank you.
First of all, thank you to the panel. It's fantastic. It's really, I wish we could have a lot more conversation. It's been exciting to hear all the different points you made. I think in certain fields, we think there's going to be a lot more struggle to bring AI into the fold, especially healthcare, things like drug discovery, those areas. In other fields, it'll probably be nice to use it to be able to improve operations and things like that. So I'm going to bring up a few of the questions that I want to make sure that we cover these questions. So before I ask you a question, I was asked by two of our partners in healthcare that can I forecast, when I would need to produce new drugs and more drugs because of the demand. And I said, let's go and look for, can we forecast coffee production based on weather and based on other conditions in Brazil as of today. So we went to chat, multiple chats, Llama, OpenAI, tried everything. None of them could come up with a good answer. They all came up with very weird answers. Some of them gave formulas, but they didn't really give the answer. The same as asking the science questions. Mary has 3 sisters and 2 brothers. How many siblings does one of the brothers have? A very simple question. I don't know if you read that famous article that came out recently. Right? It couldn't answer those questions because it's a logic question, and it's not able to correlate brother, sister, sibling as all being similar, and counting the number of siblings, and counting the number of brothers and sisters. Right? So there's some really interesting questions on logic. Right? And so can we rely on AI systems to be able to help design entire software stacks, entire service systems? I don't know if you all remember, almost about 15 years back, 20 years back, I was working with Christoph Nicola on an FET project on trying to simulate smart cities from scratch. 20 years back. It was funded by FET to look at autonomous systems, to be able to design systems. So we built a multi-agent framework. We had thousands of agents in a very fast computer at IBM Research, Watson Labs, to be able to create all kinds of entities that behave differently within a smart city, and how they would buy and sell information goods. So, as an example, the idea was, can we create a smart city by using certain simple rules? So that was one of our first ways of trying to generate something out of software systems. So I'm just asking a question again, which is, would you in the future see services and systems, entire systems being designed by sort of AI techniques, where you will build a knowledge model, build the tools, and based on how you actually create the system? So, question to all of you. I know it's a little bit loaded question, but I know who wants to take. Marco, you can.
So I'll change field. I had a friend who designs furniture.
You put mic closer?
Is it that on?
That's all right.
Yeah, so I have a friend who designs furniture, custom made for like offices or shops and so on. And he is worried because his added value is in the design. Then someone else fabricates the furniture, someone else installs it. So his added value is the design. And he's playing with tools that do automatic design based on some of the technology you said, and he's telling me they're starting to be pretty good. So I don't think it's black and white. Will it design the whole stuff or it won't? It's like, which part will it design? Which in the design process, where will it come? And where can it help? So I see it as a tool. It's a tool that's very new, so I expect that it improves. And slowly it grows over where it has deficits. So in that perspective, I'm quite optimistic. I don't think it can do the whole design and then we were free from jobs now, but in a few years or a few decades, we might. That's at least my personal perspective. I hope I promote something.
Just a comment. Wouldn't it be good to have, let's say, a kind of large language model that was especially built for furniture design? Would that be better? Would it be different? And how could we build one of those systems? That would be my question to this one. But what is your take on this?
With tools like Midway, right? Midway helps you do graphical design to a certain extent by asking a simple question and out comes some sort of weird concoction of images that sort of mimics the question you're asking. Are you expecting Midway-like systems, which not LLMs, but more image manipulation, processing, using generative AI techniques, transformer techniques, to create new kinds of graphics? So we are going to see some of that happen in the CAD area as well, where the design could be impacted by these mid-journey kind of tools that are coming out, or DALL-E as well. So I use DALL-E now to create my front page of the PowerPoint document, which brings some drug discovery and other things together. And then I pick and choose amongst the 50 that this is one seems to be interesting. Otherwise I have to do the design myself, so my brain is shutting off in some sense. But also, is it making us a little bit dumber in the process? That's the question I always have.
I'd like to directly answer the question of Bernhard. From my understanding, it is almost better to particularly train a large language model for a particular application domain, because then it is specialized on a particular task, and then the results are, of course, better. But the question is, if you have just one task, then the situation is pretty clear, but typically you do not have just one task, you have the second and the third, and then you have a multiple of different tasks, and then you have a multiple challenge to train different foundational models, and then it becomes overwhelming, and there's some dilemma situation between some specialized models for a particular task complementation and some general model, and I think this is the real challenge we have to deal with.
And if you want to jump in on whole system design, whole service design, any comments? Well, I think there's going to be some interesting things happening over the next 5-10 years, where entire factories might be designed using generative AI techniques, optimal way to place things, where will the actual production happen, So it'll be designed in some sense. So there are lots of tools coming out, I guess, in the next 5-10 years. There's already plans in place. So you could see some closed spaces or warehouses being designed in certain ways. So it could happen. So it's a physical system, but also has services component to it, which is an important part. The bigger question now to the audience is software stack development. This has been a big topic, at least in Silicon Valley. Are we going to start implementing everything using AI tools, LLM tools, and so on and so forth? We ask the question, okay, help me design a website, and give me the software for that. Out comes all things. Obviously, there's tools like Fraud GPT and other kind of GPT that come out that actually will find ways to break that. So I just want to hear a perspective on, as practitioners, as teachers, and as academicians, what do you think is going to happen in the world of software development and the operations side that Microsoft and others are beginning to do?
It's a very tough question. Very, very tough question, Ramesh, you ask. So I cannot speak for industry in a very restricted way, also for academia, but what I see myself from the usage of GPTs, LLMs, if you wish, in what you call a software stack, is that, like I presented briefly in my 5 minutes, is that typically code generation productivity, it increases, but it also is of lower quality, typically the code. Refactoring is done and suggested by LLMs, but only in a minority of the cases this is correct, and security and related aspects are not very effectively covered yet, at least, by LLMs, and this notion of hallucination then still comes into play. And this is especially, I would argue, problematic for those programmers who have little experience, right? So you still need to have, at least for the time being, this human check.
Actually, from my understanding, I have a feeling that the large language models provide a new tool in the toolbox, and the new tool in the toolbox is very fancy, and everybody likes to use the new tool in the toolbox for every problem he or she sees in reality. Although some of these problems might not be even good to be solved with large language models, and this might be the reason why it's currently some of you might know that we have something like the Gartner hype cycle, and a large language model are currently really at the peak of the hype. And I think this view is a little bit complementary to the view Marcus said about the change of the paradigm shift, because of course, if you look at large language models with the deep learning technologies on the one hand side, and on the other hand, the good old-fashioned AI technology, there are clearly two paradigms, but I don't think there are really colleagues who would argue that just one of the two paradigms are the future of computing. I think we all agree that it will be some hybrid architecture in the future, and I think the interesting thing for the future for us as computer scientists would be really to identify in which situations we like to use which tools to be really successful in doing our jobs.
I just wanted to make a small point related to that. As a new tool, We have to learn how to use it, but since we are learning, how can we teach our students to use the tool? But we have to learn at the same pace that they are learning. So it's always a bumpy ride, because my students are using LLMs without telling me. So
All of them.
and how do you deal with that?
So I let them and I tell them that they're responsible for what is produced. Because that's the tool. So if you use a hammer, you're responsible to hit the nail, not your finger. So it's the same thing with the tool. Especially on the I just want to answer to your point, which I totally agree. I wasn't trying to say that LLMs are an alternative to all fashion AI. If you take translation, as you mentioned as an example, I think it's perfect. Because how were they doing translations in the 60s? It was with vocabulary, they were with ontology, they were trying to learn the grammar. Right? So that was the way it worked for regulated domains. And now DeepL works on general text quite well, and has very little understanding of the grammar, if anything at all. Right? So that's where we see. Well, at least this is not part of the explicit input that's given. It's a lot of examples.
It's not part of the marketing
Yeah.
message.
But that's the kind of shit I'm saying. I'm trying to identify. And with good old fashion AI, I'm very fond of. I worked with that for a long time. I see it as techniques from there should be integrated. So LLMs are not enough by themselves. And they're good at some things, mostly natural language production. They're not good at reasoning, logic, planning. There's a lot of examples show they work in some cases, in many other cases they work very poorly. Right? So I think that's where you get the integration of different techniques. So it's not a hammer that solves all your problems, but it's still a very powerful hammer. It can actually solve many problems.
No, I think great points. I think there's still a lot more to do. I have a feeling that there's right now plenty more hype than actual value, because we're trying to deploy the systems in production and we find a lot of issues. So then we have to go back to the drawing board, redo the whole design without LLMs and see, okay, how do we actually do it without that? So there's a lot of also thinking behind the process there. And I know we have 3 minutes left. I'll ask the next question. So we are noticing in healthcare, this is our perspective, that LLMs are not really doing well, which means they're declining in terms of value that they can offer because of the zero tolerance of errors and mistakes and things like that. However, we built our own sort of transformer-based models using proprietary data, which gives much better accuracy. So do you anticipate in the next 5 years, LLMs to see a decline, but next generation of tools, generative AI tools, using multimodal data sets, right, giving you much better accuracy, much better performance coming in, including writing software? So that's just the last question. And as I said, from our point of view, LLMs are not going to be that great for health. And we've published lots of work on that topic. Everybody's complaining about it. But in other domains, it will be very interesting. So I want to hear your perspective. That's a question I had. The last sort of question: are they facing a slow decline? And we're just obviously spending cycles trying to test it.
You know about Moore's law, right? Did Moore know about how they would get chips faster and faster 3 years later? He didn't know.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's similar here. I expect that the progress continues. I don't know if it's LLMs or something else, but well, one technique might decline a little bit. I think, and I see a pace which is really impressive. So in 5-10 years, some of the problems you have now can be solved. But don't ask me how, otherwise I would be famous and rich. Neither of those.
So the last, any comments on your end? Any comments here? Anything on your end where you see a decline and then a re-emergence of better technologies?
Actually, just repeat myself. I think in the future we will see integration of the good old-fashioned AI with large language models, and some call it neurosymbolic AI, and I think this is very interesting and very stuff we see in the future.
Since we are in Crete, I don't expect a new AI winter soon. So having said this, we're running out of time.
I know we're out of time, but I wanted to thank the panel. A lot of discussions, a lot of stuff to do. Maybe there's only specialized LLM, specialized AI tools coming out, which actually will do the job. So thank you once again to the panel. Thank you for Any questions in the audience? Last one. Can we take the last question from the audience? Anybody has any questions, anything they want to ask? We didn't get a chance to get the audience to ask a few questions.
And otherwise, we have
One last question. Go ahead.
Generative AI to make up what we have.
So the question is the related to furniture. Would you value generative AI to be creative and create art and create different kinds of furniture? You know, is that going to be an impact?
I think to answer that, you have to define creativity, and that's very hard. I mean, you could say in art there's actually also some incremental value to it as a kind of a shift. So I'm not an expert in that, so I don't feel comfortable in answering. My impression is that these designs that are created fit, and people seem to appreciate them and be happy with them. So if you had something like a translation in the 60s, it was horrible. Right? It's okay, this is not what I like. But now you get this thing generated, and you're reasonably happy with it. So from the point of the user experience, I would say yes, actually, why not? It is creative, it's appealing. I mean, the poster that was yesterday of Frank, the background was generated by ChatGPT. And did you like it or not, right? So there is, yeah, you can go Frank, no worries. So my impression is that once you decide that it's creativity, that may call one way or the other, but if you decide that that thing can be creative, yes, it is creative.
So anyway, thank you to the panelists and the amazing presentation. Thank you. Hopefully we look forward next year to have similar conversations and see where things are.
So we have the coffee break now, and we can reconvene in about 20 minutes.